Hello, fourth graders. We're going to be reading chapter 18 of First Rule of Punk today. As I'm reading, I need you either to be having your book open, following along, or following the screen. And make sure you're following the words. At the end of this chapter, I'll show you the question we're going to answer in our reader's notebook today. Chapter 18. Joe's place was a 2-story brick house with a small, unfenced front yard. Before I rang the doorbell, I sent Mom a text to remind her I was hanging at Joe's. I told her we were working on a school project, which was technically true. Mrs. Hidalgo opened the door wearing a pink ruffled apron over her jeans and t-shirt. The apron matched her stripe in her hair. Malu, come on, she said. Good to see you again. Hi, Mrs. Hidalgo, I said. The sweet smell of vanilla and powdered sugar filled the air when I stepped into the Hidalgo's house. I imagined it must be what the gingerbread house in the forest smelled like to Hansel and Gretel, yummy and inviting. But unlike the gingerbread house, the Hidalgo's home felt safe. There was no danger lurking unless you counted the possibility of my band plan completely falling apart. Go ahead and put your bag down, Mrs. Hidalgo said. Joe's pretty excited about the band. Me too, I admitted. Well, I offered Joe my services if the Cocos needed them. Thanks, I said. I'm pretty sure we're going to need help. I'm baking, but I'm almost done. Give me a holler when you need me, she said. They're in the basement, first door in the hallway. I gave her a little wave and headed in the direction of the basement. As I walked down the stairs, my stomach flip-flopped like a fish out of water. Boys and girls is another example of showing emotion and not telling how she feels. How do you think Malu's feeling when her stomach flip-flops? Think about it. What if the band was a big failure? What if I couldn't find the nerve to sing? What if Ella decided not to show up after all? I'd left a note in her locker with Joe's address. Hey, Malu, Benny said when I reached the bottom of the stairs. To my surprise, Ellie was already there. She sat with Joe and Benny on the carpeted floor. There was a drum kit set up, as well as a few acoustic and electric guitars. Against one wall were record crates. I felt like I was at Dad's place, back home again. Malu must feel really good right now. Oh, good, you're here, I said, trying not to sound too relieved. Yeah, I can't believe it either, she said, shaking her head. Do you guys know each other? I asked as I fished the petition out of my bag. We do now, Joe said. Benny's in my science class, Ellie added. Now hand over my 30 signatures. I found the sheet and placed it in her outstretched palm. So, it's more like 27 signatures, I said. Is that okay? Because we really need you. The only way I'd even gotten that many was by asking Mr. Baca for permission to tape the petition to the circulation desk in the library. Ellie looked at the names on the sheet. I waited, afraid she'd say no deal and leave. Fine, she said, adding the page to her clipboard. Did you guys sign this yet? She held it up to Benny and Joe. Yeah, twice, Joe said and laughed. Only one signature counts, Ellie said with a frown. Joe shrugged. So really you're in? I asked. Sure, Ellie said. I can't play drums, but I do have my own drumsticks. She pulled the sticks out of her bag and held them up. I asked my mom to take me shopping for these. I'm actually excited to use them. Wait, you mean you brought us a drummer who can't play drums, Joe asked. Punk rock is all about DIY, I said. That stands for do it yourself, and that includes learning how to play an instrument. I smiled at Ellie. I was secretly happy to have another girl in the band. Watch some videos, listen to the song a bunch, and you'll be playing in no time. You're nuts, Maria Louisa, Joe said, shaking his head. I made a face at Joe. Besides, my dad says Ramon songs are easy to play, I said. Listen to this. I pulled up a song on my phone and hit play. When the song ended, everyone looked at me like I was as nuts as Joe claimed. That doesn't sound easy, Ellie said. Your mom offered to help us, I turned to Joe. Can you ask her? Oh man, she would love that too much, Joe said. No way, dude. Come on, I pleaded, we need help. Then you go ask her. Fine, I will. I stood and stomped up the stairs. I followed the sound of banging metal and found Mrs. Hidalgo crouched in front of the oven pulling a cookie sheet out with a mint-covered hand. It smells really good in here, I said. Hey, I'm making vegan polvorones, she said. Mexican wedding cookies. She pointed to a tray on the counter. Try one. I picked up a powder cookie and bit into it. Well, it's good, I said, leaning on the counter. I think I've had this before. Not vegan, though. Just trying to add some options at the coffee shop, Mrs. Hidalgo said. Need any help, I asked. I won't turn down help, but aren't you needed in the basement? Actually, I came to get you, I said, and gave her a nervous grin. We need your help. Okay, then. How about you help me finish up the hair? Mrs. Hidalgo said. Take each cookie and roll it in the powdered sugar, then place it on the cookie sheet. She slid a metal bowl full of snowy sugar in front of me. I turned on the warm water and soaped up my hands. As Mrs. Hidalgo and I worked, I tried to get a closer look at the tattoos on her arms without being too obvious. On her right forearm, she had a cluster of pink and orange flowers that looked like balls of tiny petals, kind of like something you draw on a spirograph, repeating the pattern of tiny petals over and over. Below that, on her wrist, she had 2 sets of initials written in black script inside an anatomical heart. That's like the heart that's inside your body. On the other arm, there was an image of a girl. So can you imagine? Those are all the tattoos that Mrs. Hidalgo has. The girl looked like Pippi Longstocking, except she had long braids sticking up on either side of her head. Instead of Pippi's white freckled face, the tattoo girl's face was brown and round with thick lips and a wide nose. She sort of resembled one of those huge stone Olmec heads. She wore striped socks like Pippi and what looked like an embroidered Mexican dress, the kind Mom owned. Belts crisscrossed over her stockings. Is that supposed to be Pippi Longstocking? I asked. This, said Mrs. Hidalgo, looked at her arm, is La Pippi. She looked like Pippi Longstocking, but not. When I was a kid, I was so obsessed with Pippi Longstocking books that one year I decided to dress up as her for Halloween. I had the red wig and the mismatched socks and 2 big shoes. Mrs. Hidalgo smiled, remembering her costume. My mommy made a patchwork dress even though she had no idea who Pippi Longstocking was. I even painted some freckles on my nose. I went all out. I read those books, I said. Cool costume idea. I thought so too, Mrs. Hidalgo said, until one of my friends laughed at me. Why? I asked. She thought it was funny because Pippi is white and, well, obviously I'm not. But it was Halloween, I said. The point of dressing up is that you can be anyone. Right, Mrs. Hidalgo said. I was 9 and it never dawned on me that I couldn't be Pippi or anyone else for that matter. Not just on Halloween, but whenever. Mrs. Hidalgo carefully placed the powder cookies into a storage container. Anyway, I drew this character when I was in college, said. It's Pippi with a Mexican twist, to remind me that I shouldn't let others decide who I can be. It's an important lesson, boys and girls. I like it, I said. Does it help remind you, I mean? Believe it or not, it does. That's really cool, I said, rolling the last of the polvorones. Well, mija, you have earned your cookies, Mrs. Hidalgo said. Thank you for helping. She wiped her hands on her apron and placed a few cookies onto a plate. Share these with the band, okay? I'll be right down. Thanks, I said. This was fun. I took the cookies and headed to the basement, ready to start our first official band practice. About time, Joe said as I came down the stairs. Benny could have learned how to play the bass 5 times by now. Relax, I've got cookies, I said, and your mom. I set the plate down on the floor. Benny immediately pounced. These cookies taste interesting, Ellie said, biting into one and studying it closely. If you aren't going to eat it, gimme, Benny said. He snatched what was left of the cookie out of Ellie's hand. Ellie tried to take it back. Yo, stop it, Joe said. You fool's gonna break something up in here. Sorry, Benny said. He and Ellie tried to clean up the cookie crumbs that had scattered. When Joe's mom got to the basement, we officially started band practice. My job was to rewrite some of the lyrics to Blitzkrieg Bop and get rid of objectionable content, as Mrs. Hidalgo had suggested. So I turned it into Back to School Bop. This was a performance at school after all, but I ended up mostly watching while Mrs. Hidalgo went from Ellie to Benny to Joe, helping each one with their parts. She showed them chords, where to move their hands, which part of the drums to hit and when. She was like a cool, good-smelling punk rock music teacher. I felt jealous that Joe had her as a mom, and watching them together made me miss Dad even more. Joe and Benny played until their fingers started to blister. Ellie really seemed to understand what it meant to set a rhythm. It was almost like she discovered a talent she never knew she had. It made sense to me. She seemed like the kind of kid who was determined to do well at everything she tried. The afternoon flew by, and when I finally looked at my phone, I saw that it was already 5. I gotta head out, Benny said. Thanks for the help, Mrs. H. Anytime, Benny, Mrs. Hidalgo replied. It's good to see you hanging out with Joe again. You used to be so close. Yeah, this was fun, Benny said, and bumped fists with Joe. We need to practice every day until the audition, I said. Cool? Benny nodded and held out his fist to me and Ellie, and we bumped them too. We definitely need practice, Ellie said, following Benny out. In case none of you noticed. Oh, we noticed, Joe said. He flailed his arms in an exaggerated air drumming motion. See ya, Sheila E. Who's Sheila E? Ellie asked. Only one of the greatest drummers ever, Mrs. Hidalgo said. Ellie gave her a thumbs up and grinned. I should head out too, I said, walking over to the crates of records. Be very careful with those, Joe said. He looked over at Mrs. Hidalgo, who was wrapping up a guitar cord and whispering menacingly, or she'll kill you. I know how to handle records, I said, flipping through the albums. It made me think of being at Spins and Needles. I grew up in a record store. How sad for you, Joe said, made a face like he was about to cry. Be nice, Jose, Mrs. Hidalgo said in a warning tone. Malu, I want to hear more about that later. But right now, I want you to listen to me. Could you pull the brat out of there, please? I moved my fingers through the bees to find the album. Sandwiched alphabetically after Bad Brains and before Best Coast was Lola Beltran, the wailing lady with spider leg eyelashes. It was weird how she seemed to be everywhere. I still hadn't listened to that CD I borrowed from Senora Aralia. I kept flipping until I spotted The Brat. There was only one record. I recognized the cover from the wall at Kalaka. The band photo had an 80s punk look, all black and white and red and orange background. The band's name was printed on top in a funky font that included a backward R. At the bottom was the title of the album, Attitudes, written in white script that was visible against the black of a men's shirt. I pulled the record and handed it to Mrs. Hidalgo. She slipped the record out of its cardboard sleeve and placed it on the record player, then carefully lowered the needle onto the vinyl. I heard the familiar popping and crackling, my favorite sound in the whole world, and the first song started. It began with a reggae rhythm on guitar, those bouncy staccato sounds that made me think of being at the beach. Then came the drums, heavy on the cymbals, and finally a woman's voice was like the hot chocolate Mom made in the winter, thick and warm and strong. The song went from its reggae intro to poppy punk. I couldn't resist moving to the beat. Okay, so maybe punks did dance. This is amazing. Who is she? I picked up the album cover and studied the photo of the woman whose voice sang out from the speakers. That's Teresa Covarrubias, Mrs. Hidalgo said. The Brat was a Los Angeles band in the early 80s. This is so rad, I said. And they're Chicanos, Mexican Americans, Mrs. Hidalgo said, like us. Like us, I repeated the words in my head. The next song came on. It was another fast punk song with a reggae beat. I'm going to leave you to your musical nerd fest, Joe said. Later, Maria Luisa. Walk her home, Joe, Mrs. Hidalgo said, please. Do I have to? Joe whined. I'll make you a mix sometime, Malu, Mrs. Hidalgo said, ignoring Joe. You should know all punk has to offer, not just the standards. And you should know that people's influence on the genre, it's part of your history. Thanks, Mrs. H, I said, and followed Joe upstairs. Still hearing the music in my head and Mrs. Hidalgo saying, like us, she must not have known that I am a coconut who doesn't even eat cilantro. Your mom's great, I said to Joe as we walked back to the building. You don't know how good you have it. She's all right, he said, a little weird, but I haven't even told my mom about the band. Seriously, Joe asked, why not? She wouldn't like it, I said. Anyway, she doesn't really have to know. As long as we do well in school and don't complain about being here, she's happy. If you say so, Joe said, sounding unconvinced. Practice at your place tomorrow, right? I asked. Yeah, Joe said, tomorrow and forever from the looks of it. I thought at Mrs. Hidalgo saying that it was important to know my history. Mom had said the same thing when she was telling me about Posada. But the history Mom was talking about was totally different than the history Mrs. Hidalgo was talking about. Wasn't it? Okay, boys and girls. The question we're going to talk about today is, why were Mrs. Hidalgo's tattoos significant to Malu? Because I want you to think, why was it important for Malu to see these tattoos? And I want you to think about taking evidence from the chapter. You could see something like Pippi Longstocking provided somebody for Mrs. Hidalgo to connect to. It's showing Malu that you have to be your own person. Think about your answer and write this in your reader's notebook, and we'll see you tomorrow for chapter 19.